advice is if you want to be doing something, don't wait until you're doing it to start talking about it. Talk about it ahead of time.
Well, Tanner, congratulations. You recently closed on your first business, if you will,
First acquisition.
Yeah, first, true purchase. So we'll see my interviewing skills, but as I fly solo, basically interviewing you. I guess we'll just kind of kick it off. Tell us about the deal, what you bought, and what's your plan for it.
Yeah, so closed on a hotshot trucking company, and
what's hotshot?
So hotshot is basically like direct loads. So you think of transportation trucking. Typically, you think of the big dry vans, which are normal 53-foot trailers with a semi. Hotshots are smaller trailers, usually a pickup truck. They stay under typically the 26,000 mark.
26,000 pounds.
26,000 pound, yeah. So anything under,
you gotta dumb it down for us.
anything under 26,000 pounds, you don't need a CDL to carry. And so if you see a pickup truck on the highway with DOT numbers on the side of the window, that's a requirement that they are a commercial truck, and there's specific. You have to have medical certificates and all that stuff. And when you get to 26,001 pound and above, you have to have a CDL, commercial driver's license, to operate. And so, I've been in real estate for 4 or 5 years now. And as we came out of a uncertain market and deals stopped flowing as frivolously as they were before, my wife and I realized that we had to put in 4 times the amount of effort to do the same amount of deal flow. And we just weren't willing to do that. We're good at what we do in real estate, but we have much more enjoyment out of the asset management and fund management than we do brokerage. And so coming to terms with
brokerage being buying and selling,
representing others to buy and sell. Yeah. And so still do it. We still have a, good client pool. And luckily, my wife being here, if I'm on the road, we're able to balance it. And so coming out of a really hot market where the wind's at your back and deals are closing left and right, and we're making really good income, to the nationwide deal flow is cut by 50%. That's literally 50% of the deals transacting with the same amount of agents or brokers. So, that's much shorter supply and 4 times the demand. So you got to work much more. And we just weren't willing to put the time in to make the same amount of money, or put 4 times the amount of time. And so we started looking at what our other skills are and what fills our cup. I drove for the military for 10 years, and it's always been easy for me. My business, mindset, I figured would be a good leverage piece in this industry where it's typically blue collar. A lot of the drivers are owner operators. That's what they've done. They're not the technical experts of business ownership. And so went out, got my CDL last year while still, focusing on real estate. Drove for a company for about 6 months, and as life happened, Nicole got in a bad car accident and pulled me off the road, and so took back control of what we wanted to be doing, and basically just put it out there into the world that I want to buy a trucking company. And so I started talking to people about it, and I think that's the best advice is if you want to be doing something, don't wait until you're doing it to start talking about it. Talk about it ahead of time. And so I started telling people that this is what I'm looking for, if anyone knows of a trucking company for sale. And turns out that a business partner of mine said, oh, I have a friend who's moving to Hawaii and they're looking to sell their trucking company. And I wasn't thinking hotshot at all. I was thinking semis. I want to buy, big companies. And the opportunity was a hotshot company. So I just dove in, did all the research. It's been probably 4 or 5 months of due diligence, just learning everything there is to know about it. And I came to really like this side of the industry because it's a lot more manageable from the start. And so we were working on this purchase, or I sent the initial LOI, I think back in March, and now here we are July 1st, and we just closed on it. So
back up one thing. You said easier from the start. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
So where semi trucks bring in a lot more revenue, it's very typical that a semi trucking company is operating at a 10 to 15%, profit margin. Whereas with a hotshot company, it's bringing in less revenue, but it's a higher profit margin, which gives me a much bigger margin of error. And so with that, basically we found that if I don't have to drive every week. Had an employee, come with the company, and with it being a smaller company size, my profit margin with just him driving 52 weeks a year or 50 weeks a year, it'll cover the debt service. And so with me driving, that's where I start to build in profits and scalability.
How does it work with both of you driving at the same time?
So in team driving situations, which is common in hotshot and in semi-trucking businesses, CDL drivers have an 11-hour clock. You can only drive for 11 hours, work for 14. And so after 11 hours, you have to stop driving, you're parked. With a team driver, we can switch off and the opposite person. Now there's sleeper requirements. If you are doing team driving, technically the person not driving has to be in a certified sleeper, which meets specific requirements. It's all governed by, the FMCSA, which is the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, that says that your sleeper, where you're getting your rest, has to be certain width, certain height, has to be certain material on the bedding and all that stuff. And so there's some caveats and workarounds, but typically that's how it works. Is with us alternating 11 hours on, 11 hours off, we can keep the truck moving pretty much 24 hours a day.
How long do you have to rest in between 11 hours?
10 hours.
10 hours. Okay. So that's where the 11 hours comes into play.
Exactly.
So you're working off of a 22-hour clock.
Exactly. Yep.
Gotcha. So you found the deal, put it out in the ether, said, hey, I'm looking for this. Buddy found it or brought it to you, negotiated it. Can you kind of break down the terms as much as possible? Kind of high level, start off at the top and kind of break it down, if you will.
Yeah, so we started the conversation. The seller had multiple trucks and multiple trailers, and so we agreed to a purchase price. During that process, one of the trailers was decommissioned. He decided to sell the trailer, and with that, having more trucks than trailers, he decided to keep one of the trucks and take it with him on his move.
Decommissioned? Why?
When they go out of service. So because when you're going down the highway, you see those weigh stations on the side of the road. Even though it's a pickup truck with a trailer, it's still a commercial load. We're still required to stop at those. And when you go through those, you have to make sure that your weight per axle is accurate or is within limits. And there's a checklist of 710, I think it's roughly 710 items that they will check on your vehicle. And if they find any violations, you're fined for it. Now, those things can be a crack in the windshield. It can be your tread depth. It can be a light bulb that's out, and any other plethora of things.
A lot of safety stuff.
All of it is safety stuff. So, so on any of those items, if they find anything like if there's a gash in a tire, on a trailer tire, you're technically out of service. Now, there's certain violations that are just infractions. They'll send you a fine. It might be 200, it might be 600. Then there's the bigger ones where like you're overweight or you're too heavy for your axles. So each axle has an assigned weight to it. And if you're over that weight, that could be a $5,000 fine. But when you so one of the trailers had some dings and dents, had some gashes in the tires and stuff. So it's not serviceable. It's going to lead to issues. And so it makes more sense to sell it. And so with that, during our due diligence process, he decided to take one of the trucks with him, and I agreed to it. And so we just agreed to a different price with a percentage down payment and seller financing. So
two questions based off from that. Who do you sell the trailer to? A non-commercial person or someone that's willing to put in the work to fix it up and get it back serviceable?
I'm typically just on Facebook Marketplace.
Just Joe Smo that can still use it, just not from a commercial aspect.
Yeah, so that particular trailer was a dump trailer, so it's pretty common. It's not one of the long ones. The other trailer we have is a 35-foot flatbed. It's a much more limited target that you're going to sell that to. It's mostly going to be hotshot drivers or lawn care, trucking or construction companies, stuff like that. So,
okay. And I don't remember my second question, so we'll let you get back to the deal.
Yeah, so. I mean, we worked that out, and I evaluated the numbers or underwrote the deal, did a cost analysis of the equipment. So the what is it called? the assets that you're buying.
FF&E.
Yeah, FF&E. And so coming to a realistic number with that, taking away depreciation and not a lot of goodwill. The big thing with trucking companies is everything operates on a load board. And so it's basically like a Craigslist. You go on and people being brokers, post loads saying that it's going from this place to this place. We're willing to pay this much. This is how heavy it is. This is how long it is. And then you go in, call, negotiate, all that stuff. Well, when you're a new carrier, which is carrier's company, when you're a new carrier, it's impossible to get loads. They don't want to touch you because you're too risky for them. And the insurance companies have been holding the brokers accountable. So the same as we think in real estate, you're representing a buyer and seller. There's not a ton of liability on you. We still have E&O insurance. But imagine if you were completely liable for what the seller was selling. Anything that went wrong, the broker.
Because you're subbing out. In theory.
Yeah. So how it works is a shipper contacts a broker or a broker gets, an intake form. They agree to a load and say, shipper says, I have 3 steel beams that need to go from Cleveland, Ohio to Wichita, Kansas. And, can you give me a rate on that? The broker will say, yep, I can get it done for X amount. I don't know how many miles that is offhand, but let's say it's 1,000 miles. Well, I can get that load booked for $1.50, and broker then goes $1.50 a mile. Yeah. So $1.50 a mile, $1,500. So they go post that load on the load board for $1,200 and which is $1.20 a mile. And then, there's dispatchers, which in terms, think of the broker as the seller's agent, dispatcher as buyer's agent, who, will find me loads. They go in and look and see $1.20 a mile. They call on it, negotiate, maybe they get up to $1.30 a mile. And then they come to me and we pay the dispatcher 8%. And that's negotiable, like what you pay your dispatcher. But
does dispatcher work for you? Or is it just
they're independent? So they might have
10 people, but
exactly.
They're working for you.
Right.
Like they're calling you saying, I got this load you might be interested in.
Yeah. And so one of the ways that when I came on during my due diligence, I worked out with the seller for me to drive for him. So I was his employee for X number of days and until I was comfortable with the business. And through that, I learned a lot of things in the business, adjusted my underwriting. Every time I'd come back from a load, I'd come back and, redo my underwriting and found ways, the dispatchers are great. It's passive. If I want to be very hands off, I would know that he's just, booking loads and making sure my driver's out driving. But what they don't do is fill your trailer. And so if we think of this table as a flatbed, he might find a load that's 2,000 pounds and takes up this much space. Well, I'm going across the country, and if I'm doing this much, it's maybe only paying $1 a mile, and that's barely covering my fuel expenses, my fixed expenses. So I need to fill the rest of this trailer. So what I found is that by me being more involved with the dispatching process, creating systems around it so that I can eventually hire someone on to take, be out of that part, I can fill this trailer and maybe bring $3, $4 per mile on average. So just finding different ways to add value. And I really like looking at constraints. And there's a book I recently listened to. It's called The Goal. Was Eliyahu.
Is that the one? So Microsoft executives have to read that or something?
It might be.
It's basically about systems and processes.
Exactly.
I haven't read it, but I've been recommended.
It's
in
a
the last,
phenomenal one.
funny enough, in like last 2 weeks, I've heard the recommendation like 3 times.
It's a great book. You gotta and I like the perspective. It's a first person realistic fiction about being a factory worker and factory manager and finding constraints and bottlenecks and efficiencies. And we've talked before on this podcast. I like the idle miner games because it forces you to start thinking about finding bottlenecks. And with me being an employee to this business during my due diligence process, I was able to find some bottlenecks that aren't incompetence or
malfeasance
or negligence or exactly. It's just natural constraints that happen in the business. And what can I do to implement to make sure that doesn't happen? For example, one of them that I noticed was that the employee driver was just fueling up wherever was convenient. He would just go along his route, whatever's right off the highway, he'll go fuel up, whether it's $3.20 a gallon or it's $4.80 a gallon. It was just whatever was convenient. And also the pickup trucks only have like a 25-gallon fuel tank. So that meant he was fueling up every 2.5, 3 hours. And so that adds in another 15 minutes every time. Sometimes those truck stops are packed. So sometimes we don't get through the fuel pump for 25, 30 minutes. So that adds a lot more time and more stops. So what I did is I found an external fuel tank that you can put in the bed of the truck that it has a toolbox and a fuel tank combo that'll add 55 gallons. That means he can drive almost 10 hours straight without stopping, which that driver can do. I cannot. I drink too much water, so I got to stop every 20 minutes. But
and you get a bladder or whatever you call those little things. Just peeing.
Yeah,
Catheter.
exactly.
Catheter.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for.
Well, and so by doing that, that takes away one constraint. Then there is adding in incentives. And so I'm trying to build a employee incentive program where if they stay below a certain average dollar amount for fuel across the country, which, I mean, we made trips out to Idaho, Washington, California, where fuel is $4.80 a gallon. And we've been in, the Midwest where it's much cheaper. So incentivizing them to fill both tanks, both the external and the internal fuel tank, where the fuel is $3.50 a gallon. And then they don't need to fuel up as much when they're in California and whatnot, and can get back to the places where it's cheap. And if they maintain an average, then I'm going to put a bonus incentive in there. So I haven't quite worked out exactly how that'll work, but it's just other ways that I can add value to this company that, like I said, it's not negligence and it's not anything irresponsible. It's just subtle ways to make a slight difference. It might be $400 a week difference, but over 8-10 trucks and the course of a year, that's a lot of money.
So what was the top line that they were bringing in, if you can say?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of how he was operating was as an owner operator, and so he was bringing in money based on his own efforts. And then when you transition into hiring someone out, the top line isn't as great. I mean, we basically worked out a contract where
let's ask this another way. How do you underwrite something like that?
Yeah, so the cleanest way is take the EBITDA and add a multiple to it. And the multiple in trucking companies is much lower than some other types of companies. How do you even come up with the bottom line though to well, not even bottom line, but the EBITDA, if you will, if he's owner operator, if he's driving. Right. And that's where it's hard. So basically what I did is I removed any owner operator income. So he gave me a profit and loss statement. I did it based on what the employee brings in on his percentage, because the drivers aren't paid. In some companies they're paid per mile. Some companies are paid percentage. I mean, it's set up currently for a percentage model. And so subtracting out that, and the multiple based on just the one driver operating, we found a number that makes sense. And
he was agreeable to that.
Exactly. And so, and it wasn't far off from his original asking price. He wasn't overzealous. It was just, he wanted to take care of the driver. He wanted to see someone else take over the company. And so, with the multiple on the income that this one driver can produce on his own was darn close. It was within $1,000 of the percentage above equipment cost. So adding in that goodwill and the goodwill. So what I was getting to before is the new carriers, they don't get loads. So on these load boards, you can call a broker and they'll look up your MC number, your authority number, and say, I see you've only been in business for 2 months. So yeah, call me back in 6 months. They don't, I mean, it's pretty across the board. Like, they just won't work with you. And part of that is because their insurance holds them so accountable. And that's what we're talking about there. So part of me wanting to buy an existing company on at a price that is above equipment cost was there's multiple years of history. And so basically I'm buying an existing operation where there's no trouble getting loads. And so when I'm underwriting it, I'm looking at what the solo driver can bring in, assigning a multiple to that. And then I also valued it as what percentage above equipment cost is the purchase price. And I had a number that I was comfortable with going above equipment replacement cost, minus depreciation. And the multiple was very close to that, like I said, within $1,000. And so what that's telling me is that I'm basically buying, if I was to just go out and buy this equipment off of Facebook Marketplace from a dealer, whatever, this is how much I would pay for it. And I'm also buying that historical experience for the ability to get loads. And I assign a dollar amount to that. And that's how we got to our purchase price.
Yeah, I remember when you first called me about this a handful of months ago, whatever. You're trying to structure it. My first initial reaction was, sounds like it'd be cheaper just to go buy a vehicle and a trailer and hire out a driver, not knowing that with the historical numbers and all that you're talking about, MC or whatever you called it, not knowing that aspect. And so that's why it's important to know the ins and outs somewhat of a company or not a company, but industry that before you start buying it. So not ever researching that industry. I didn't know that. So I'm like, dude, it'd be better to go on down the street, buy a truck and a trailer. But
yeah, and that's something that I didn't understand until I got into the due diligence, because my plan.
So you didn't even know that ahead of time.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so my plan was to do an asset purchase by, basically by the employee, by the equipment and all the, everything's already set up, and transfer it into a new name. Just through my due diligence, I learned that it's probably more beneficial to do a stock sale where I'm basically buying his ownership of the LLC with all the existing infrastructure. And so that's where it immediately creates an income stream. If I was to just go buy the equipment, set up an MC number, I have monthly payments already. You have insurance payment. Insurance in the trucking industry is insanely expensive.
Insurance today is insanely expensive.
So for your pickup truck, for example, you probably, might pay $200 a month, with a clean driving record for a brand new truck, maybe $300-$400. For transportation over the road, it's like $1,700 a month.
Wow. Is that just more time on the road, more time for accidents to happen?
That, and you have higher liability. So you're required by working with these brokers to have certain money. Exactly. So you have to have certain, property damage limits, and it's like $1 million, policy. And so there's a lot more liability, especially when on your truck, you might put in 10, 12,000 miles a year, whereas we're putting in 80, 100,000 miles a year. So
yeah, makes sense. I mean, just their risk goes up, the premiums go up, or your premiums go up.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you agree, you're unpacking the due diligence, everything clean in the due diligence, no issues, no nothing, or what's kind of story there?
Yeah. So I don't like to retrade. So when I go into a real estate deal,
what's retrade?
So retrade is where you agree to a price, and then you get through your due diligence, and then you say, I don't like this. We're going to have to come to a different price. To me, it's slimy tactics. If my initial underwriting is accurate, basically my due diligence is just verifying that all my underwriting was accurate.
As long as nothing has been not disclosed to you.
Exactly.
There's no material changes.
Right.
And that's, I guess, kind of caveat retrading with, you give a price of $100,000 based on the information you have. If information withheld, then that can either positively or negatively affect the deal.
And that's the one caveat is if there's any dishonesty or anything, then that's where it's justified, I think. Yeah. But if my initial underwriting said X dollar amount, I give an LOI for that amount, and then they provide due diligence materials. I go through all the underwriting, and it all checks out to be within tolerance of my initial underwriting. I don't think there's any need to nickel and dime and say, let's take 10% off or whatever. Like that's just not good business.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I haven't retraded, I guess, but I'll give an example of. I'll give two examples. One of just a simple kind of understanding of what I mean initially by material difference. You're buying a building and you agree to pay $100,000 for the building, and they're like, oh, the roof was just changed last year. You're not a roof expert. You don't know. Mm-hmm. And so you get a roof expert out there and they're like, this roof hasn't been changed on 20 years. Obviously that's a difference because your underwriting was assuming a brand new roof when now you got to replace the roof. So just a simple example there. But I know the sixplex that I bought, like found the cracked sewer line. Obviously, that's underground.
You have no way of knowing.
I had no way of knowing that. Yeah. So retraded, if you will, based on that. I think it was like $6,000 difference or something.
And I think a perfect example in real estate is like if you're going to buy a property and you give them an offer and then you go through your due diligence and everything checks out and you go back to the seller and say, I'm going to need to paint the exterior. So can we take, $10,000 off the purchase price? You saw the exterior before you put the offer in. There's no reason for that. But a cracked sewer line is a perfect example of something that
some people would say that's still retrading though.
What is?
Like the cracked sewer line. You should bake that into your due diligence based on, say, 1 out of 10, I'll have a cracked sewer line. So you bake in it's all the due diligence and it kind of evens itself out over time.
That's one perspective. My personal opinion is...
No, I'm just throwing out something different.
I'm willing to pay X price if everything, underground literally checks out. So, and I can understand that perspective. But anyways, all my due diligence checked out. All the numbers made sense. And I got it to a point where, granted, we had to adjust where my plan was only to team drive once a month. And we figured in order to build a little bit more cushion, because we can cover double the miles when we team drive, I should drive every other week. And so it's a good balance in our schedule and made sure, obviously, I'm talking to my wife the whole time.
Team drive?
Team drive is where you have two drivers alternating.
I guess team drive every other week?
Yeah.
Or so he's going to drive 50 weeks out of the year.
Right.
Okay.
And then I will team drive 26 weeks or 25, whatever that winds up being. So, and then my plan is in the first 6 months to add an additional truck with a higher capacity, bigger trailer. We can do heavier loads and hire on a second driver for that first truck. So my agreement with my wife was when buying any business, we need to be able to fire ourselves in the first 6 months. And if that means I drive for 6 months, fire myself into a managerial role or into a dispatcher role, then 6 months of that, fire myself from that role and scale this business. That's the agreement.
Unpack that some more.
So I'm buying this business more as an owner operator. Correct. It does have another driver, so it offers a little bit of flexibility.
So you're starting out as an operator.
Right.
And so you're saying you need to fire yourself up the ladder to CEO.
Right.
Say there's 10 rungs on that ladder. Mm-hmm. So 6 months of each. So in whatever, say 10 rungs. So in 5 years, you should be basically just
scaled out of the business. Right. Yeah. And that's the agreement that we had is, every time that 6 month period, then I should get more home time. I should get more or less responsibility and be able to delegate more. And so building that infrastructure from the start and finding, hiring incentives and, the whole nine, I basically built all the framework for it before I even bought the company. And so.
Yeah, it's interesting because I went kind of the opposite route. I went into an industry that I couldn't be an operator. So it's, I fired myself immediately from being a plumber. So.
Well, and that's just one strategy. And I think my strategy was cash flow tightened on the real estate front. What's another skill that I have that worst comes to worst, I can still generate enough income?
You have inherently less risk there because you can always drive.
Right.
Versus me, like I can never be a plumber. Well, I mean, not never, but it would take me 5 years to get there.
And that was part of the plan was that if this driver walks out, then I can just take over and drive and I can still generate income until I can hire another one on. And part of the due diligence process was me vetting him too, and making sure that he's someone that I want to keep around and that he wants to stay around. And, you get to know someone real well when you spend, 7 days straight in a truck with them. Mm-hmm. So, and just me bouncing some of my ideas off of him just for how to scale the business and seeing the type of mindset that he has, it lessens my risk significantly. But that is always a fallback, is that if I have a fleet of 10 drivers and I have a couple of drivers walk out, I can still jump in and operate.
Yeah, you would think, obviously, I guess the risk is different, but the larger you scale a company, the less one employee is detrimental to your company.
Right. Like same as real estate.
Yeah. If I have 10 plumbers, like I'm losing 10% of my workforce as soon as one quits. If I have 100 plumbers and one quits, it's like, okay,
1%.
Yeah. Like we'll just move this around real quick.
Right.
So it makes, obviously you have the now you're feeding 100 families versus 10 families.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got to make sure revenue and all that stuff. There's other things to stressors or worries, but
you lose the personability too. It's like when you have 100 employees, it's hard to know every single one of their names. You have 10, you should know their families, their kids' names, you know.
So, yeah. So you bought it and you closed yesterday. You pay cash for it, or what's kind of how'd you structure this?
No, so because of the purchase price and the, like I said, that percentage above the asset price that I was willing to pay, we worked out a seller financing deal. And so we worked it out where I made sure that before my initial offer that the price that I was willing to offer him was one within relatively close to the price he was asking. Because if someone's asking $1 million for a company and you offer them 600,000 with seller financing, probably not going to happen. But you offer them really good terms, and we've talked about this before. Is, you know, if I pay you $1 million, but I give you $1 a day, the terms matter more than the dollar amount.
Yeah, and also you and I had this conversation. I don't remember if it was this company in particular, but what is your opportunity cost loss by not buying it? Mm-hmm. You could sit here and be like, it's $50,000 more than I want to spend, and wait a whole nother year, and you just lost $500,000 in opportunity cost.
Right. So
you just 10x your loss.
Yeah, that's
kind of my philosophy on it. Like, if you're going to get into real estate, if you're going to get into business, if you're going to get into investments, get into it now. Mm-hmm. Like, yes, next year there could be a crash between now and 12 months from now, and things will be cheaper, but you're already in the game. Like, you're going to find another excuse later. So just get in the game now. If that's your plan, just bite the bullet. Don't let fear dictate what you're doing.
Absolutely. And that's part of our New Year's resolution. We didn't sit down and say, I'm going to go to the gym, and all the normal stuff. I probably did say that, but we want to fail faster this year. Yeah. Our goal is just to fail faster, because last year we failed. It's constant in business. We failed multiple times, but it was very slow failures, and they take up a lot of time. Whereas if we fail faster, Cody Sanchez had this, and I know we've talked about it on the podcast before, but one of the most successful billionaires that she was talking to said that, what separates you from all the people who didn't make it? And he said, when an opportunity presents itself, people will look at it, they'll evaluate it, they'll take it back to their board or their committee or whoever their sounding board is, and then they'll eventually decide to take action on it. By the time they decide to act on it, I've already bought it, made 3 mistakes, and found a better way to do it. And so that was the point of buying it this way. Granted, we added the protections. It doesn't mean be foolish and purchase things that are just going to wind up belly up and set ourselves up for failure. But we bought something that is a size that we're comfortable with, where we have adequate protections in place. We took enough time to make sure that it made sense while still generating income in the meantime. And if this doesn't come to fruition, we have the assets to be able to cover the difference. So I think that not biting off more than we can chew. And this is part of my men's ministry, is I brought this problem, a year ago to my men's ministry, and which is basically 12 guys sitting in a room being your personal board of directors and making sure that you're looking at everything from a Christ, lens, Christ-driven lens. And one of the guys in my group, he said, it's great that you have ambition to go after all these big deals, these 10-figure deals or whatever. And
10-figure? That's a pretty big deal.
Wow. I was thinking $10 million deals, not 10-figure. $10 million deals.
I'm like, commas.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to buy Apple.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. $10 million deals. But, what you're losing out on time, you could have done 10 smaller deals. You could have done 10 $1 million deals in the time you tried to do this one $10 million deal. And so I've been focusing on staying small enough, long enough.
Yeah. So we'll go off on a little tangent on this one.
On this podcast?
You have people like Grant Cardone that preaches, go buy a $400 Class A, your first deal, type thing. You got other people that say, start off with a single family home and work your way up. I'm more in the buy a single family home and work your way up type person, because to this regard, like, buy as large as you can where you feel comfortable. Like, my first deal was a duplex and a fourplex, bought them both the same day in a package. But I had a single family home under contract before that I got basically scared. So that was like my training wheel. So, I got 90% through that and backed out. So you can count that as my first deal, if you will. But then it gave me the confidence to go on the next deal. And so now, like, I'll go buy 50 unit money. For me, I don't know about raising money. That's one thing I haven't done, but not saying that I can or won't. But like, if I had the capital, like a 50 unit, whatever that come out to, $5 million roughly, wouldn't, in Omaha, $5 million wouldn't necessarily scare me. But I would have never thought of doing that 3 years ago when I got into this.
And I went the opposite route. I've raised money for every single deal I've ever done.
But you did it with others that had already, like, you had, like, for me, I needed training wheels. You had bumpers.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I chose the bumpers and it's a different form of leverage. Like, your leverage was staying in that size that you were comfortable with, and being able to take down deals all on your own. I leveraged the experience of other people to be able to take down bigger deals. We went from buying a single family to a duplex to a 31 unit apartment building, and in 2 years. And through those bigger deals, like, yeah, they pay off really well when things are going right. But when things aren't going right, they go south really quickly. And so, and we've sold off a lot of our properties just to get back to a level of comfortability. And so us focusing on, not just in the real estate sense, but in business in general, keeping more of the pie. And I've constantly heard, I'd rather have, a piece of the watermelon than, a whole grape. I'm leaning towards the whole grape right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's a totally different, it's a tangent on a tangent, but
yes,
yeah, I would,
And
I think there's some truth to that.
I think, bringing it back to the company is finding something that's small enough to where it can have an impact for my family based on the time that I'm putting into it. Because there is a time value of money, right? There's a money value of my time. And so we've come to terms with the amount of sacrifice that's going to need to go into this and the protection that's going to provide our family. And so while I'm still doing real estate deals, I'm still brokering, I'm still, involved. The conversation is this a pivot or is it shiny object syndrome? And actually part of this process was, while we were working on closing this company, we hired a business coach and had a meeting with my business coach this morning. And I asked him that question. I said, what can I use to discern whether I'm pivoting intentionally or chasing shiny object syndrome? And the guidance that he gave back was, along the lines of shiny object syndrome is the grass is greener, where pivoting is taking things that you already have your 10,000 hours in, your expertise, and finding ways to continue providing. And he brought up, I had a post on LinkedIn that he mentioned, actually, we started the conversation, a little bit of a tangent. He's giving me a hard time because he's like, I saw you had this really negative comment on there, and you just got to take those and maybe do a whole post about someone commenting negatively. And he's saying something about, my post was, my priorities are God, wife, family, or God, wife, kids. He's like, you had this comment on there that was saying, yeah, what about you? And so, yeah, I don't know who that jackass is, but
Is that what you said?
I said that. I said that we're.
It was me for reference.
Yes. So, and I told.
But one time I got on LinkedIn last month.
yeah, and left a comment, but it was funny because he took it in a teaching moment, and he's like, your priorities are God, wife, kids, and that's what I've been preaching constantly to myself this year is. And I'm looking at every opportunity. Does it serve those three areas? And if not, then it's not worth doing. And real estate, yes, does serve those purposes, but it's not serving it fast enough. And so looking at the skill sets that I already have, like if I was to go open a bakery, that's shiny object because I have no skill set in that area. I can't cook for crap. And it would just be a distraction that looks good on the outside. By leveraging what I already know and understand and accepting that there are things that I don't yet understand that I need to discover and uncover, I can take those 10,000 hours that I've already put into this industry and leverage it to serve God, wife, kids. And so he gave, it was a much more in-depth conversation, but basically the guidance is it's a pivot if you already have experience in that area and you can leverage it towards your ultimate values. And that's where we just came to terms is, can the time that I need to put into this industry serve my values more than the industry that I'm currently in? Because the real estate market comes in waves. It'll come back. Our properties will go back up in value. I mean, not that they really dropped, but the time that I'm weathering that storm and waiting for things to correct, is there a better use of my time? And sometimes that might be going to work at Walmart. There are definitely times when I've been, out walking properties and putting 70, 80 hours a week in to not make a commission and, go back and do it the next week. And then you do the math when you finally get that commission. It's like, I worked for less than minimum wage.
$3 an hour.
I could have worked at Walmart and better served my family. And so, granted, I don't have any experience shelf stocking, so that would be a shiny object, not a pivot. And I just think that there's been multiple times over the course of my real estate career where I've, you get $50,000 in commissions one month and then 6 months without it. During that 6 months, I've had to pivot and go plow snow or go, do
Uber Eats.
Yeah, exactly. And just things that I already understand because the time spent on those are better serving my family than real estate.
So before we close this, July 4th, 2030, where's this company at? What are you doing top line? How many employees? Unpack it all. Pull out the crystal ball. Something we can go back and unpack.
I am trying to actively fight my ambition.
You're not trying.
I'm.
What are you doing? I want to know what you're doing. I don't care what you're trying to do. What are you doing? So,
breaking down where I see this in 5 years is getting into semi-loads, brokerage on the trucking side, is having an oiled machine where I have people that are out getting loads and I have them selling those loads to other drivers, providing those to our drivers, and I'm hands off. I have a CEO in place in 5 years that is taking care of everything. I'm chairman of the company or president, whatever you want to call it, but I'm not involved in the day-to-day. I take the major business decisions. My full-time job is M&A, and that's what I truly love the deal making of that. And I see this as an assembly line. So if I've created all the infrastructure and I've also got the bumps and bruises where I'm not just some new guy buying into an industry trying to figure it out, I've done all the things that I'm asking my drivers to do. That's where I see it in 5 years. Is I've scaled.
What's your top line?
I don't know. In 5 years, I hope to have 100 trucks.
Don't hope. I want to know what you have. I'm not asking you for hopes.
This is a good exercise. I appreciate it. So in 5 years, I have 100 trucks, and they're bringing in $4,000 a week. So, and that's in gross revenue. So $4,000 a week is $220 per vehicle.
Yeah.
So that's 22 million. Let's see.
You said 100 trucks. So
yeah. So if each truck's bringing in 4,000,
close the decimal twice.
4,000 a week, which is
public math.
Yeah.
It's actually 216
times 52, 208 times 100. That's 20 million. So about 21 million top line. So more importantly than that, my goal is not the top line revenue. I want to employ
100.
Well, that's 100 drivers plus back office plus all that stuff. By 5 years from now, I will have 500 employees.
So it's funny kind of poking at you on this, but that's, not that I'm a coach or anything like that, but that's what coaches do. Like, it's just that slight reframing. I hope to have.
You're challenging the internal conversation.
Correct. Like we're getting off on another tangent here, but by saying I hope to have versus I will have, like you're just reframing things slightly. And it goes back to what are you telling yourself?
Right.
Like I hope to have gives you an out. I will have. There's no like, you just built the door and you framed it all in, and it's like you put yourself in the room, and now you got to fight that bear.
I think it was episode 5 or something like that we talked in depth about reticular activating system versus manifesting. And I really do believe in that. And I appreciate you calling that out, because it's easier for you to call someone else out on it.
It is. Because you don't realize that you're saying it.
Yeah.
Like I've had people do the same thing to me. I remember first guy that ever did it to me, his name was Vadim. Her name is Vadim. And I was on a call with him, and he just called me out of the blue, like on it. He's like, "You said this, this, and this." Mm-hmm. I was like, "Whoa!" Like I didn't even realize I did it. Like it's just your vernacular. It's how we talk.
But on the reticular activating system, if I am conscious about saying things as more definite, then I'm going to look for opportunities that serve that. Yeah, I definitely appreciate that.
So, any last minute things we left out of this?
I think that it's important to talk about, again, with the shiny object and the pivoting, that I
think we just released one.
Yeah, a couple episodes ago. I think people are constantly right now looking for the side hustle, and I want the side hustle. And when does the side hustle become the main hustle? And when it's, obviously we look at it as people going from their W-2 into real estate. When does real estate become the main hustle? Well, when it's providing more income than the main, potentially. I think that having multiple income streams can protect you from certain things, but being intentional with the time that you're putting into all of it. Because if I have 7 income streams that are bringing in $1,000 a month, can I just focus on one of those to bring in $7,000 a month and then build something that's self-sufficient, or balance the time? There's constant levers pulling there.
There is. And I think the levers is a perfect analogy, because if you can focus on the 7,000 from one, you kind of let the other 6 fall off. There's more risk there versus,
And that's where we found the risk, is that we put all our eggs in that one basket, hoping for that. I said 7,000 a month, but hoping for those big payoffs. And when they don't pay off, then you're left in the dust. And it's not to say that you have to choose, should I put all 7 into lever 1 or 1 into 7 different levers? It could be 2 and 5. It could be 3,
It just comes back to time.
Exactly. And everyone has their own scenario, and listening to any idiots on YouTube saying that you should do it one way or another, it's a range. And we talk about this all the time. It's work-life balancing. Is the balancing for me might be more of one than the other. For you, it might be more.
So I'm even changing on that. It's funny, like, I don't know how many episodes we're in, 45 roughly. Just my philosophy of doing this, and like my thought on goals, how much it changed. My thought on work-life balance. Like as we have these conversations and I read more books and stuff like that, like my stance changes on that. So like I think we did an episode on work-life balance. Like since we did that, like I think my viewpoints have started changing.
Well, so I think this would be a good reason to tune into the next episode, and we can go more in depth on how our perspectives have shifted, especially through the conversations that we've been having with people. We've talked to a lot of really great entrepreneurs,
both on and off camera.
Absolutely, and that shifts my perspective on things, and
other podcasts you watch, books you read,
absolutely
things. So
we're growing up.
We're growing up. We're becoming real boys and girls.
On
that. Thank you, Tanner, and best of luck.
All right.